have a list, if the list is still open, of 100 different texts that have been banned or challenged, that are classic books, books that many of us identify as important pieces of literature, understanding the human psyche as to what are humans and how do they exist and how do they function. So The Great Gatsby is number one in this particular list, but others you might identify. Number two is A Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, The Color Purple by Alice Walker, Ulysses by James Joyce, Beloved by Toni Morrison, Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell, Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, The Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien, the one that was recently made into, or not too recently, Satanic Verses, Clockwork Orange, some of which have been turned into films, Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, On the Road, Kerouac was up here, Ginsberg's poem Howl actually wound up as a court case, Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of these authors, but they're important authors in the history of writing, in the history of literature, for humans, I think, in general. I usually read a poem or two from Shel Silverstein's book, A Light in the Attic, which is behind you, the image of it. And some of these poems are banned in schools or school districts because they support children acting inappropriately, or they cover a topic that might scare a child with a scary creature, or that somebody might eat something, or that a child acting inappropriately, or might get an idea of how to act inappropriately by a poem. And so one that I like to read is, I like it a lot for a couple of reasons. One, in my house, my wife is an avid horse person, and my daughters like horses a lot. They like animals a lot. And so my wife, as a child on up to recent times, has always wanted a horse, and I've always supported her in having a horse. But the name of this poem is called Little Abigail and the Beautiful Pony. Are you guys familiar with this? His graphics are beautiful. Shel Silverstein, the anniversary of his birth was in the last week or two. There's my favorite radio show is on at about, it's about 2:55 to 2:56 in the afternoon on KUOW in Seattle, 94.9. It's the University of Washington's public radio station. And the radio show is called Writer's Almanac, and it's hosted by Garrison Keillor, the person who's responsible for a radio broadcast that's been on the air for a very long time called The Prairie Home Companion. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. But he celebrates every day in this little teeny 3 to 5 minute window of radio time an author's birthday or a celebratory event, the Bill of Rights, or I'm trying to think of who it was recently. A couple of days ago was Frank Herbert, the gentleman who wrote Dune, and he was a Tacoma native, and I didn't know that. And it was just a little piece that I learned in my little teeny window of personal education, really, if you want to call it that. So, Shel Silverstein actually was, he's also a songwriter, a lyricist, and many of his poems that we know as poems are actually lyrics of music that he wrote. The Unicorn song that the Irish Rovers sang is one of his songs. Johnny Cash in the 70s made popular a song that Shel Silverstein wrote called A Boy Named Sue. Some of you maybe have heard it. That's one of Shel Silverstein's works. I actually have a couple of LPs that I currently can't find. One of my hobbies is collecting vinyl that actually have Shel Silverstein. They're actually Shel Silverstein LPs where he is actually singing along with in lyric form the poems of his books. And it's, if you ever, and I'm sure if we did a search for on YouTube of somebody taking and lifting that and turning it into a video file to where you can hear his voice is very different. Have any of you heard Shel Silverstein's voice? It's very high pitched. It's almost squeaky. It's really kind of a fun voice. And to hear him sing along with some of his poems, I think, are great. And I don't want to monopolize the stage by any means. Many of you have come to read, which is really, to me, the important aspect of this meeting, is we have this 2-hour window of time. The first hour mostly presented here in our Science Dome, and the second hour will be out just outside the Science Dome, where we have what we call our upper winter garden, and we have a little area off to the side where there'll be coffee and donuts and cookies and such that Student life, student activities has provided for us, so students can engage with kind of a social aspect outside. And the reason why we're going to move the second part outside is because food and drink aren't allowed in our science dome here on campus. So I thought I'd read this poem, then I'd open it up for anybody else who would like to read. I have this book, and I have earmarked some of the poems in here, and I'll leave it up here if you want to read a Shel Silverstein poem. You don't necessarily have to read one that's banned. Anything you wish to share or read today, of course, you're invited to do so. So the poem I want to read, and the only one I'll read today, is called Little Abigail and the Beautiful Pony. There was a girl named Abigail who was taking a drive through the country with her parents when she spied a beautiful, sad-eyed, gray and white pony, and next to it was a sign that said, "For sale, cheap." "Oh," said Abigail, "may I have that pony? May I please?" And her parents said, "No, you may not." And Abigail said, "But I must have that pony." And her parents said, "Well, you can't have that pony, but you can have a nice butter pecan ice cream cone when we get home." And Abigail said, "I don't want a butter pecan ice cream cone. I want that pony. I must have that pony," all in caps. And her parents said, "Be quiet and stop nagging. You're not getting that pony." And Abigail began to cry and said, "If I don't get that pony, I'll die." And her parents said, "You won't die. No child ever died yet from not getting a pony." And Abigail felt so bad that when she got home, she went to bed, and she couldn't eat, and she couldn't sleep, and her heart was broken, and she did die. All because of a pony that her parents would not buy. And at the very end, in parentheses, it says, "This is a good story to read to your folks when they won't buy you something you want." So the cartoon, and again, I apologize, I don't have a projector up front, but the cartoon has Abigail in bed, her parents begging her not to die, with a little script above her said, her mother says, "Oh, if she were only alive, I would buy her 100 ponies." And the father says, "Oh, what fools we were." And then there's a little poster over Abigail's bed, and it says, "The pony that they wouldn't buy me, too late." So there's a little poster, and Abigail's lying dead in her bed. So this poem, this book was banned partly in, and I couldn't tell you which school district in the United States it was banned in, because the poem suggests to children who read it that it's totally okay to be confrontational with your parents, that you should not question authority, that you should just go status quo, and if somebody tells you not to do something, you're not supposed to do it. Somebody tells you you're not supposed to have something, you're not supposed to have it. So the idea of kind of starting with parents and censorship is kind of a subliminal note here, which of course can be taken out of context. So if any of you would like to read a Shel Silverstein poem, I will leave this here. I also brought a copy of, this is the first American printing, it's pretty beat up, I found it at Goodwill here in Lakewood, of a novel I like a lot called Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Woolf. And I don't know if any of you have seen it. There was a BBC miniseries that was done of it in the early 80s that I believe is on Netflix streaming now. And then there was a film interpretation made of it in the last decade. So the text was basically condensed into a film. And the reason this book has been banned is because the protagonist of the book, the main character of the book's name is Charles Ryder. And he meets a man while attending Oxford named Sebastian, who is an eccentric, a rich kid. Charles Ryder himself is as well rich, but he is not as rich as Sebastian Marchmain, who lives in this beautiful, amazing English countryside mansion, or that's where he stems from. And his family is completely dysfunctional. And a relationship develops between Charles and Sebastian. And the book never outright says it's a homosexual relationship, but it's strongly inferred that they have a much more developed relationship than the book presents. And so that is the reason why this book is identified as number 74 in this title of Challenged Classics on the American Library Association, ALA.org website. And if you're interested in that, you can go to the Wikipedia site, or you could go to, there are link through sites that you can go and read about how this book has been banned or why it has been banned. But basically this book was banned because it promotes homosexuality. Although there is nowhere in this text that says they have a relationship of a sexual nature. It's all slightly kind of cloak and dagger inferred. And the film that they recently produced shows it more pronounced. The BBC documentary, or not documentary, but film, miniseries, suggested strongly they had a relationship of a sexual nature, but it wasn't as pronounced. And so anyway, so there's that as well. If anyone wishes to read it, I'll leave them both here. Thank you for coming today.
Hi, I'm Audrey Scarborough. I work in the library as a adjunct reference instructional librarian. I'm also an instructor, but so what I'm going to share with you today is The Giver by Lois Lowry. And we're actually reading this to my 7-year-old daughter right now. She's a second grader. And so I'm going to read to you from a part that she particularly liked, that we had an interesting, pensive conversation about. And I think the importance of Banned Book Week is, and the reason why we should share these ideas is because we have a lot going on internally that we don't quite understand, and or we may think is unique to us, or we may even be scared of thoughts that we have. That if you have a book to read that kind of helps you think about those thoughts, you can vocalize them, and you can talk to other people, and you can share them in wonderful ways in which we can change the world by our thoughts, because thoughts lead to action. And so The Giver, if you are not aware of what this book is, it's a dystopian novel about kind of what could happen if we decide that it would be better to never feel pain and to never feel all these nasty emotions, and to always just have a very organized, very contained life, in which you have one path, only certain people get to do certain things, and everything is very structured. I'm not really giving it justice, so read it. Okay, so I'm reading chapter 15, which is kind of in the middle of the book. It's page 118. Jonas entered the annex room and realized immediately that it was a day when he would be sent away. The Giver was rigid in his chair, his face in his hands. I'll come back tomorrow, sir, he said quickly. Then he hesitated. Unless maybe there's something I can do to help? The Giver looked up at him, his face contorted with suffering. Please, he gasped, take some of the pain. Jonas helped him to his chair at the side of the bed. Then he quickly removed his tunic and lay face down. Put your hands on me, he directed, aware that in such anguish the Giver might need reminding. The hands came, and the pain came with them, and through them. Jonas braced himself and entered the memory which was torturing the Giver. He was in a confused, noisy, foul-smelling place. It was daylight, early morning, and the air was thick with smoke that hung yellow and brown above the ground. Around him, everywhere, far across the expanse of what seemed to be a field, lay groaning men. A wild-eyed horse, its bridle torn and dangling, trotted frantically through the mounds of men, tossing its head, whinnying in panic. It stumbled, finally, then fell, and did not rise. Jonas heard a voice next to him. Water, the voice said in a parched, croaking whisper. He turned his head toward the voice and looked into the half-closed eyes of a boy who seemed not much older than himself. Dirt streaked the boy's face and his matted blonde hair. He lay sprawled, his gray uniform glistening with wet, fresh blood. The colors of the carnage were grotesquely bright, the crimson wetness of the rough and dusty fabric, the ripped shreds of grass, startling green in the boy's yellow hair. The boy stared at him. Water, he begged again. When he spoke, a new spurt of blood drenched the coarse cloth across his chest and sleeve. One of Jonas's arms was immobilized with pain, and he could see through his own torn sleeve something that looked like ragged flesh and splintery bone. He tried his side, felt the metal container there. He tried his remaining arm and felt it move. Slowly he reached to his side, felt the metal container there, and removed its cap, stopping the small motion of his hand now and then to wait for the surging pain to ease. Finally, when the container was open, he extended his arm slowly across the blood-soaked earth, inch by inch, and held it to the lips of the boy. Water trickled into the imploring mouth and down the grimy chin. The boy sighed. His head fell back, his lower jaw dropping as if he had been surprised by something. A dull blankness slid slowly across his eyes. He was silent. But the noise continued all around. The cries of the wounded men, the cries begging for water and for mother and for death. Horses lying on the ground shrieked, raised their heads, and stabbed randomly toward the sky with their hooves. From the distance, Jonas could hear the thud of cannons. Overwhelmed by pain, he lay there in the fearsome stench for hours, listening to the men and animals die, and learned what warfare meant. Finally, when he knew that he could bear it no longer and would welcome death himself, he opened his eyes and was once again on the bed. The giver looked away, as if he could not bear to see what he had done to Jonas. "Forgive me," he said. Jonas did not want to go back. He didn't want the memories, didn't want the honor, didn't want the wisdom, didn't want the pain. He wanted his childhood again, his scraped knees and ball games. He sat in his dwelling alone, watching through the window, seeing children at play, citizens bicycling home from uneventful days at work, ordinary lives free of anguish, because he had been selected, as others before him had, to bear their burden. But the choice was not his. He returned each day to the annex room. The giver was gentle with him for many days following the terrible shared memory of war. "There are so many good memories," the giver reminded Jonas, and it was true. By now Jonas had experienced countless bits of happiness, things he had never known before. He had seen a birthday party with one child singled out and celebrated on his day, so that now he understood the joy of being an individual, special and unique and proud. He had visited museums and seen paintings filled with all the colors he could now recognize and name. In one ecstatic memory, he had ridden a gleaming brown horse across a field that smelled of damp grass, and had dismounted beside a small stream from which both he and the horse drank cold, clear water. Now he understood about animals, and in the moment that the horse turned from the stream and nudged Jonas's shoulder affectionately with its head, he perceived the bonds between human and animal. He had walked through woods and sat at night beside a campfire. Although he had through the memories learned about the pain of loss and loneliness, now he gained too an understanding of solitude and its joy. "What is your favorite?" Jonas asked the giver. You don't have to give it away yet," he added quickly. "Just tell me about it so I can look forward to it, because I'll have to receive it when your job is done." The giver smiled. "Lie down," he said. "I'm happy to give it to you." Jonas felt the joy of it as soon as the memory began. Sometimes it took a while for him to get his bearings, to find his place, but this time he fit right in and felt the happiness that pervaded the memory. He was in a room filled with people, and it was warm, with firelight glowing on a hearth. He could see through a window that outside it was night and snowing. There were colored lights, red and green and yellow, twinkling from a tree which was, oddly, inside the room. On a table, lighted candles stood in a polished golden holder and cast a soft, flickering glow. He could smell things cooking, and he heard soft laughter. A golden-haired dog lay sleeping on the floor. On the floor, there were packages wrapped in brightly colored paper and tied with gleaming ribbons. As Jonas watched, a small child began to pick up the packages and pass them around the room, to other children, to adults who were obviously parents, and to an older, quiet couple, man and woman, who sat smiling together on a couch. While Jonas watched, the people began one by one to untie the ribbons on the packages, to unwrap the bright papers, open the boxes, and reveal toys and clothing and books. There were cries of delight. They hugged one another. The small child went and sat on the lap of the old woman, and she rocked him and rubbed her cheek against his. Jonas opened his eyes and lay contented on the bed, still luxuriating in the warm and comforting memory. It had all been there, all the things he had learned to treasure. "What did you perceive?" the giver asked. "Warmth," Jonas replied, "and happiness, and, let me think, family. That it was a celebration of some sort, a holiday, and something else. I can't quite get the word for it. It will come to you." Who were the old people? Why were they there? It had puzzled Jonas, seeing them in the room. The old of the community did not ever leave their special place, the house of the old, where they were so well cared for and respected. They were called grandparents. Grandparents? Grandparents. It meant parents of the parents, long ago. Back and back and back, Jonas began to laugh. So actually, there could be parents of the parents of the parents of the parents? The giver laughed too. That's right. It's a little like looking at yourself, looking in a mirror, looking at yourself, looking in a mirror. Jonas frowned. But my parents must have had parents. I never thought about it before. Who are my parents of the parents? Where are they? You could go look in the hall of open records. You'd find the names. But think, son, if you apply for children, then who will be their parents of the parents? Who will be their grandparents? My mother and father, of course. And where will they be? Jonas thought. Oh, he said slowly. When I finish my training and become a full adult, I'll be given my own dwelling. And then, when Lily does, a few years later, she'll get her own dwelling, and maybe a spouse, and children if she applies for them, and then mother and father. That's right. As long as they're still working, contributing to the community, they'll go and live with the other childless adults, and they won't be part of my life anymore. And after that, when the time comes, they'll go to the house of the old, Jonas went on. He was thinking aloud. And they'll be well cared for and respected, and when they're released, there will be a celebration. Which you won't attend, the giver pointed out. No, of course not, because I won't even know about it. By then I'll be so busy with my own life, and Lily will too. So our children, if we have them, won't know who their parents of parents are either. It seems to work pretty well that way, doesn't it? The way we do it in our community? Jonas asked. I just didn't realize there was any other way until I received that memory. It works, the giver agreed. Jonas hesitated. I certainly liked the memory, though. I can see why it's your favorite. I couldn't quite get the word for the whole feeling of it, the feeling that was so strong in the room. Love, the giver told him. Jonas repeated it. Love. It was a word and concept new to him. They were both silent for a minute. Then Jonas said, Giver? Yes. I feel very foolish saying this. Very, very foolish. No need. Nothing is foolish here. Trust the memories and how they make you feel. Well, Jonas said, looking at the floor, I know you don't have the memory anymore because you gave it to me, so maybe you won't understand this. I will. I am left with a vague wisp of that one, and I have many other memories of families and holidays and happiness, of love. Jonas blurted out what he was feeling. I was thinking that, well, I can see that it wasn't a very practical way to live, with the old right there in the same place where maybe they wouldn't be well taken care of, the way they are now, and that we have a better arranged way of doing things. But anyway, I was feeling, actually, that it was kind of nice then, and that I wish we could be that way, and that you could be my grandparent. The family in the memory seemed a little more, he faltered, not able to find the word he wanted. A little more complete, the giver suggested. Jonas nodded. I liked the feeling of love, he confessed. He glanced nervously at the speaker on the wall, reassuring himself that no one was listening. I wish we still had that, he whispered. Of course, he added quickly, I do understand that it wouldn't work very well and that it's much better to be organized the way we are now. I can see that it was a dangerous way to live. What do you mean? Jonas hesitated. He wasn't certain, really, what he had meant. He could feel that there was risk involved, though he wasn't sure how. Well, he said finally, grasping for an explanation. They had fire right there in that room. There was a fire burning in the fireplace, and there were candles on a table. I can certainly see why those things were outlawed. Still, he said slowly, almost to himself, I did like the light they made, and the warmth. Father, Mother, Jonas asked tentatively after the evening meal, I have a question I want to ask you. What is it, Jonas? His father asked. He made himself say the words, though he felt flushed with embarrassment. He had rehearsed them in his mind all the way home from the annex. "Do you love me?" There was an awkward silence for a moment. Then Father gave a little chuckle. "Jonas, you of all people. Precision of language, please." "What do you mean?" Jonas asked. Amusement was not at all what he had anticipated. "Your father means that you used a very generalized word, so meaningless that it's become almost obsolete," his mother explained carefully. Jonas stared at him. Meaningless? He had never before felt anything as meaningful as the memory. "And of course, our community can't function smoothly if people don't use precise language. You could ask, 'Do you enjoy me?' The answer is yes," his mother said. "Or," his father suggested, "do you take pride in my accomplishments?" And the answer is wholeheartedly yes. "Do you understand why it's inappropriate to use a word like love?" Mother asked. Jonas nodded. "Yes, thank you, I do," he replied slowly. It was his first lie to his parents. "Gabriel," Jonas whispered that night to the new child. The crib was in his room again. After Gabe had slept soundly in Jonas's room for 4 nights, his parents had pronounced the experiment a success and Jonas a hero. Gabriel was growing rapidly, now crawling and giggling across the room and pulling himself up to stand. He could be upgraded to the nurturing center, Father said happily. Now that he slept, he could be officially named and given to his family in December, which was only 2 months away. But when he was taken away again, he stopped sleeping and cried in the night. So he was back in Jonas's sleeping room. They would give it a little more time, they decided, since Gabe seemed to like it in Jonas's room. He would sleep there at night a little longer, until the habit of sound sleep was fully formed. The nurturers were very optimistic about Gabriel's future. There was no answer to Jonas's whisper. Gabriel was sound asleep. "Things could change, Gabe," Jonas went on. "Things could be different. I don't know how, but there must be some way for things to be different. There could be colors and grandparents," he added, staring through the dimness toward the ceiling of his sleeping room. "And everybody would have memories." "You know about memories," he whispered, turning toward the crib. Gabriel's breathing was even and deep. Jonas liked having him there, though he felt guilty about the secret. Each night he gave memories to Gabriel, memories of boat rides and picnics in the sun, memories of soft rainfall against window panes, memories of dancing barefoot on a damp lawn. "Gabe?" The new child stirred slightly in his sleep. Jonas looked over at him. "There could be love," Jonas whispered. The next morning, for the first time, Jonas did not take his pill. Something within him, something that had grown there through the memories, told him to throw the pill away.
This is from Douglas Adams' appropriate 6th book of the trilogy, A Salmon of the Doubt, his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. And in it, it's actually was written after he died. His publisher actually went through his hard drive and pulled out a whole bunch of cool things on Douglas Adams' hard drive. And one of them was an article he wrote for Y2K coming up for the turn of the century. And we still haven't solved this, so I thought I would challenge you guys. But first on unfinished business. One particular naggly piece of unfinished business, it occurred to me the other day, is in the middle of a singing session with my 5-year-old daughter. It's the lyrics to Do Re Mi from The Sound of Music. It doesn't exactly rank as a global crisis, but nevertheless, it brings me up short any time I hear it, and it shouldn't be that difficult to sort out. But it is considered. Each line of the lyric takes the name of the note from the solfa scale and gives it a meaning. Do, a deer, a female deer. Re, a drop of golden sun, etc. All well and good so far. Mi, a name, I call myself. Fa, a long, long way to run. Fine. I'm not saying it's Keats exactly, but perfectly good, concise, and working consistently. And here we go to the home stretch. So, a needle pulling thread. Yes, good. La, a note to follow so. What? Excuse me? La, a note to follow so? What kind of lame excuse for a line is that? Well, obviously, it's a kind, what it's obvious what kind of line it is. It's a placeholder. A placeholder is what a writer puts in when he can't think of the right line or idea at the moment, but he better put in something and come back to it and fix it later. So I imagine Oscar Hammerstein just bumping in a note to follow so and thought he'd have another look at it in the morning. Okay, when he came back for another look in the morning, he couldn't come up with anything better. Or the next morning. Come on, he must have thought, this is simple, isn't it? Lost, something, 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 what? One can imagine rehearsal looming, recording dates. Maybe he'll be able to fix it that day. Maybe one of the cast members will come up with something with an answer. But no one manages to fix it. And gradually, a lame placeholder of a line becomes locked in place, and now it's formal a part of the song, part of a movie, and so on. How difficult can it be? How about this for a suggestion? Well, I can't think of one at the moment, but I think if the whole world puts together on this, we can crack it. And I think we should not let the century end with such a major popular song in such an embarrassing state of array. What do you think?
Yeah, I brought my banned book mug that I got this summer from the Library of Congress in DC. This is from Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut, and this is a great anti-war passage, which I think is particularly important in this area where we seem to just celebrate war. We are gathered here, friends, he said, to honor children dead, all murdered in war. It is customary on days like this to call such lost children men. I am unable to call them men for this simple reason, that in the same war my own son died. My soul insists that I mourn not a man, but a child. I do not say that children at war do not die like men if they have to die. To their everlasting honor and our everlasting shame, they do die like men, thus making possible the manly jubilation of patriotic holidays. But they are murdered children all the same. And I propose to you that if we are to pay our sincere respects to the 100 lost children of San Lorenzo, that we might best spend the day despising what killed them, which is to say the stupidity and viciousness of all mankind. Perhaps when we remember wars, we should take off our clothes and paint ourselves blue and go on all fours all day long and grunt like pigs. That would surely be more appropriate than noble oratory and show of flags and well-oiled guns. Thank you.
Hi, I had a poem I thought I'd read, but first I thought I'd read a little from Judy Blume, whose books you probably were familiar with from childhood, such as Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, or Forever, or Tiger Eyes, Super Fudge, Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing, lots of favorite ones. One year she was the most banned author in public schools, so she wrote something on censorship. That's what she wrote. When I began to write 30 years ago, I didn't know if anyone would publish my books, but I wasn't afraid to write them. I was lucky. I found an editor and a publisher who were willing to take a chance. They encouraged me. I was never told what I couldn't write. I felt only I had to write the most honest books I could. It never occurred to me at the time that what I was writing was controversial. Much of it grew out of my own feelings and concerns when I was young. On communism, there were a few challenges to my books then, although I remember a night a woman phoned asking if I had written Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. When I replied I had, she called me a communist and slammed down the phone. I never did figure out if she equated communism with menstruation or religion, the two major concerns in 12-year-old Margaret's life. But in 1980, the censors crawled out of the woodwork, seemingly overnight, organized and determined. Not only would they decide what their children could read, but what all children could read. Challenges to books quadrupled within months, and we'll never know how many teachers, school librarians, and principals quietly removed books to avoid trouble. I believe the censorship grows out of fear, and because fear is contagious, some parents are easily swayed. Book banning satisfies their need to feel in control of their children's lives. This fear is often disguised as moral outrage. They want to believe if their children don't read about it, their children won't know about it. And if they don't know about it, it won't happen. Today, it's only language and sexuality It's not only language and sexuality, the usual reasons given for banning books, that will land a book on the censor's hit list. It's Satanism, it's New Ageism, and 100 other isms, some of which would make you laugh if the implications weren't so serious. Books that make kids laugh often come under suspicion. So do books that encourage kids to think or question authority. Books that don't hit the reader over the head with moral lessons that are considered dangerous. Censors don't want children exposed to ideas different from their own. If every individual with an agenda had his or her way, the shelves of the school library would be close to empty. I wish the censors could read the letters kids write, such as this. Dear Judy, I don't know where I stand in the world. I don't know who I am. That's why I read, to find myself. Elizabeth, age 13. It's not just the books under fire now that worry me. It's the books that will never be written, the books that will never be read, and all due to the fear of censorship. As always, young readers will be the real losers. This is a poem by E. Cummings that usually Steve Jake writes. I don't know if he made it here today, but I always thought it was a great one, and one of those that got banned for being a little too naughty. May I feel, he said. I'll squeal, she said. Just once, said he. It's fun, said she. May I touch, said he. How much, said she. A lot, said he. Why not, said she. Let's go, said he. Not too far, said she. What's too far, said he. Where you are, said she. May I stay, said he. Like this, said he. If you kiss, said she. May I move, said he. Is it love, said she. If you're willing, said he. But you're killing, said she. But it's life, said he. But your wife, said she. Now, said he. Ow, said she. Tip-top, said he. Don't stop, said she. Oh no, said he. Go slow, said she. Come, said he. Said she. You're divine, said he. You are mine, said she.
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming to the banned book event and all the groups who participated. Now we got so many more people. I'll just do it real quick. The library student programs, the Science Dome, the Pioneer, the Penn, the Mike Avey Social Justice Project, the Banned Book Committee, the chapter of Phi Theta Kappa that I can't remember called Omega something, and the Roland Weiss Lecture Series. Can we just give, and Matt Wisher and Communications for coming in tape, can we give everybody there a round of applause? Heather Franklin, English teacher, knows a boatload more than I do, and she's had some of her about ban and challenge, and she's going to have some of her students read, so I'll turn it over to Heather.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thanks for coming here to support banned books, right? You know, we're rebel book readers. It's important to be rebel book readers. Various people in my class actually did guerrilla poetry, so if you saw crazy people reading poetry in public spaces, that was them. They were reading banned poems. But I have a few students who would like to read selections, and whoever would like to begin. Okay, do you have one, Lorraine?
I have one. This book is called The Absolute Truth Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And it says, of course I was suspended from school after I smashed Mr. Pease in the face, even though it was a complete accident. Okay, so it wasn't exactly an accident after all. I wanted to hit something when I threw that ancient book, but I didn't want to hit somebody, and I certainly didn't plan on breaking the nose of a mafioso math teacher. That's the first time I have ever hit anything I aimed at, my big sister said. We are so disappointed, my mother said. We are so disappointed in you, my father said. My grandmother just sat in her rocking chair and cried and cried. I was ashamed. So I can definitely see why it was banned. Just the first line right there said it all. It's interesting. I just, the first page I opened was that one, so I can imagine what the rest of the book is. But my daughter, being in high school, had to do an essay on banned books, And she told me that, and this is nationwide apparently, even the Bible got banned. I can see why, I guess, but that's what I have to say.
The name of the book I'm reading is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Fitch owned a cat called Mrs. Norris, a scrawny dust-colored creature with bulging, lamp-like eyes like Filch. She patrolled the corridor alone, break a rule in front of her, put just one toe out of line, and she'd whisk off for Filch, who appeared wheezing 2 seconds later. Filch knew the secret passageway of the school better than anyone, except perhaps the Weasley twins, and could pop up as suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students of all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Miss Norris a good kick. And then once you had managed to find them, there were the classes themselves. There was a lot more to magic, as Harry quickly found out, than waving your hand and saying a few funny words. They had to study the night skies through their telescopes every Wednesday at midnight and learn the names of different stars and the movement of the planets. 3 times a week, they went out to the greenhouse behind the castles to study herbology with a dumpy little witch called Professor Sprout, where they learned how to take care of all the strange plants and fungi, and found out that they were what they were used for. Easily the most boring class was history of magic, which was the only one taught by a ghost. Professor Benz had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up next morning to teach. Leaving his body behind, Benz droned and on while they scribbled down names and dates. And Merrick the evil and Eric the Audubon mixed up. Professor Flickwick, the charms teacher, was a tiny little wizard who had stand on a pile of books to see over the desk. And at the start of their first class, he took the roll call, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave an excited squeak and toppled out of sight. Professor Gunnagal was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross. Strict and clever, she gave them a talking to the moment they sat down in her first class. Other people don't understand why this book could be banned, because, I mean, they still sell the books like everywhere, movies.
Anybody have an idea?
My daughter
Yeah.
is a big fan of Harry Potter. She and my son, they both watch it, and I don't see anything wrong with it.
Anybody know why it was banned?
Satanism, witchcraft.
Was it only the first one that was banned? Because that's the first one, right? What's the series?
It was the entire series.
So serious.
Witchcraft.
And Satanism.
Satanism, right? It would turn. People are afraid that by reading something, it will turn them into.
Hello. Okay, so quick poll, real quick, before I read a passage of this. Raise your hand if you actually read the entirety of The Lord of the Rings. Okay, so it's like it's 2 people out of all this, and that's because look at this thing. It's like it's a white whale of books. And basically, when I first got this book, I got it for my 8th birthday. Tried to read it because it's Lord of the Rings, and I saw the movies, and it just, you know, swords, knights, and dragons, awesome things. And then about 3 days later, I gave up because I was about 10 pages in, and it's a thick read. Every year, substantially, that's a word. What's the word I'm trying to think of? That one. I tried to read it until eventually by the age of 13, I finally buckled down and read the thing, and it took me 6 months. And I'm a very quick reader. I can usually bust through like a 250-page book in about 2 days. This took me forever because it's like a National Geographic except this thick. Anyways, let's just read one of my favorite passages, and it's technically not part of the book. It's actually a song. Farewell we call to hearth and hall, through wind may blow and rain may fall. We must away ere break of day, far over wood and mountain tall, to Rivendell where the elves yet dwell, in glades beneath the misty fell. Through the moor and waste we ride in haste, to whither then we cannot tell. With foes ahead, behind us dread, beneath the sky shall we be our bed.
Toni Morrison's probably my favorite author. I think I've read every one. I don't think I've read every one twice yet, but it's filthy, and this goes along. Filthy, inappropriate, too graphic, too real, right? Too real. She, like Richard Wright, or Ralph Ellison, she writes such complexity, such richness. Let me see if I can find something to remember from. Let's start with early on. It's not Dr. Street. That's right, not Dr. Street. Okay, we'll just start here. Okay. Macon Dead never knew how it came about, how his only son acquired the nickname that stuck in spite of his own refusal to use it or acknowledge it. It was a matter that concerned him a good deal, for the giving of names in his family was always surrounded by what he believed to be monumental foolishness. No one mentioned to him the incident out of which the nickname grew because he was a difficult man to approach, a hard man with a manner so cool it discouraged casual or spontaneous conversation. Only Freddie the janitor took liberties with Macon Dead, liberties he purchased with the services he rendered, and Freddie was the last person on earth to tell him. So Macon Dead neither heard or visualized Ruth's sudden terror, her awkward jump from the rocking chair, the boy's fall broken by the tiny footstool, or Freddie's amused, admiring summation of the situation. Without knowing any of the details, however, he guessed, with the accuracy of a mind sharpened by hatred, that the name he heard school children call his son, the name he overheard the ragman use when he paid the boy 3 cents for a bundle of old clothes, he guessed that this name was not clean. Milkman. It certainly didn't sound like the honest job of a dairyman, or bring to his mind cold, bright cans standing on the back porch, glittering like captains on guard. It sounded dirty, intimate, and hot. He knew that wherever the name came from, it had something to do with his wife, and was, like the emotion he always felt when thinking of her, coated with disgust. This disgust and uneasiness with which he regarded his son affected everything he did in that city. If he could have felt sad, simply sad, it would have relieved him. 15 years of regret at not having a son had become the bitterness of finally having one in the most revolting of circumstances. She deals with things, we don't talk about them in class, and then I read student papers and they talk about their reality, and then you hear, and we spent so much time avoiding, and she doesn't hide it, but then I just love that piece where she gives you living with, if he had felt sad, it would have been just gorgeous. Anyway, that's mine. Thank you.
Should we lighten the mood up? I'll lighten the mood up a little bit. Here, I got Ginny Lawson. I read some of her stuff earlier. She's a blog ass. She's crazy, insane crazy. She has a blog online. And I'm going to read a different one I read earlier today. It's an open letter to my husband who's asleep in the next room. Hi, I know, the weird powder in the butter dish, right? But now you surely discovered it and probably freaking out. Well, last night I discovered that if I make Eggos, I can skip the butter knife and just drop the waffle directly in the butter tube. It's awesome, except for the hot waffle melts a weird pattern in the butter. It's like that yellow plaid, the plastic tub melts a bit. I know you prefer I use a knife, but you're kind of neurotic about that stuff, and honestly, I'm just not that kind of girl. Mostly because I'm trying to save the environment by not dirtying a knife and would have to wash. I'm kind of a hero, actually. Also, the knives are like all the way on the other side of the room. Poor planning on your part. And by your part, I mean by letting me unpack the kitchen when we moved in. I mean, I guess we could switch the utensil drawer with a takeout menu drawer, and that would seem like a lot of work unless you just pull the drawers out completely and switch them. Okay, now we have 2 drawers lying on the kitchen floor. I got them both out, but can't get them back in. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. Don't look in the butter dish. P.S. If anything, you should be thanking me for the butter texturizer. Remember that fucking ridiculous Burberry plaid car we saw, and you were like, wow, I wish someone would do that to my car or butter? Well, Merry Christmas, asshole. PPS, I'm sorry I called you an asshole. That was uncalled for. Also, by now you've read this letter, will surely claim that you did not ask for a Burberry car or anything else, but really, you've got more important things to focus on, like fixing the 3 doors that are on the kitchen floor. I know, but I thought if I took one more out slowly, I could see how it worked, and then I could fix the others before you wake up. But that totally didn't work. But I stopped at 3. You're welcome. PPPS. Shit. Okay, I forgot. I thought maybe one more would give me the secret putting the drawer back in key. Turns out, not so much. This is the point I'm considering setting fire to the kitchen to cover my tracks. But I'm sure you just blame me for that too. So I won't, because I know you'd be a jerk about it, and also because it would be wrong. I would never set fire to a house. PPPS, okay, I set fire to the house, but it totally was on accident. I was trying to make you a pizza for breakfast, and I accidentally put a bunch of towels in the oven. I know it seems suspicious since I was just talking about burning the house down, but it's just a horrible, horrible coincidence. I have to think that this will never happen again had our builders not put the bathroom so close to the oven. It's like they wanted me to set fire on the house. You guys are assholes, but not you. I love you. PPPPS, I'm going to stop at the store on the way home and buy your own tub of butter, so you won't have to see the melty Burberry one. I'm sorry. I didn't know why. I just didn't think of that in the first place. PPPPPPS, now, none of this is actually true except for the butter part. Aren't you relieved? I know you are. And now you're just less likely to freak out about the butter because, Jesus, it's not like I tried to burn the house down, except for that one time when I did. But that really was an accident, and the builder's fault too, because who the hell leaves oven instructions inside the oven? Someone who wants us dead, that's who. This is all just an exercise in perspective. PPPPPPPPS, don't look in the butter dish.